Everyone has a story to tell. Welcome to DingoTalk, where we explore the experiences that make us who we are. Here's your host, Carlo Guadagnino.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is DingoTalk. My guest this week is the head football coach at the University of Redlands, Coach Jim Good. Before we get into Coach Good's story, let's tell you a little bit about Redlands. It's located in Redlands, California. It's got 3,900 students. They have an 83% acceptance rate and a 61% grad rate. It's about $81,000 before aid, drops all the way down to $25,700 after aid. And their top three majors are business admin, management, communication science, and psychology. Now, Coach Good's going to talk to us. He's our SCIAC representative this week. He's going to talk to us about the SCIAC, about some of the things that are changing, and a host of other things. It's not my job to tell his story, though, so without further ado, this is Coach Good. What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is Dingo Talk. My guest this week is the head football coach at the University of Redlands, Coach Jim Good. Coach, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward. This is you guys have I'm learning more about the West Coast side of the D3 ball this season. We're definitely going to talk about that rivalry with Cal Lou and the bowl and the trophy that comes with that. Before we do all that, let me throw you in the time machine, take you back to 1990. How do you find yourself at Linfield?
That is a time machine, and it's embarrassing. I was just talking to a recruit today about something that happened in the 90s, and I look at his reaction on his face when I said 90s. It was like someone telling me something about the 40s, and so it's pretty depressing. The 90s is getting a long time ago, but I just wanted to continue on playing sports. I ran track and I played football. I did both in high school, and it was something I wanted to continue to do in college. And some schools talked about having to make a choice, that if you go here, we're going to have you just run track, or if you go there, you're just going to play football. And I wanted both. I really honestly didn't know what sport I enjoyed more, racing or playing football. And, I always ask guys that are two sport guys, what's your favorite sport? And to me, the right answer is whatever season it is. And that's kind of how I was. And so had some opportunities to visit a few different schools. And then I had a relative that worked in the development office at Linfield. And he got a hold of my aunt and said, hey, Jim should look at Linfield. This is a good little small college. And back then, again, back in the 90s, before the internet, we chose schools based off of what these little, those big books. I don't even know what they were called, but you'd have to, page through those to choose your school. You didn't get pictures on the internet or anything like that. But everything that this guy said about Linfield sounded pretty cool. So I had the opportunity to go down with my parents and spend a day down there, and visited with Ad Rutschman and Gary Kilgore, the two head coaches, one football, one track. And I think they were both probably on opposite ends of their careers. Gary was in his first year as the track coach. I think I was part of his first recruiting class. And Coach Rutschman was towards the end of his career. I played for him for 2 years, and it was just an unbelievable opportunity to actually compete for both of them. And after I left that visit, everybody says, when you visit the school, you'll realize that that's the right fit. And it was definitely the right fit. The messages that they both had really stuck with me. And I just really enjoyed the time being on their campus. They had a brand new facility back then. I mean, believe it or not, it was brand new back then. And so that was attractive, but more than anything else, it was the people.
Now, Coach, I did some research on you before, and this normally would be the point where I asked you, when did you get the coaching bug? I want to ask specifically about this basement sledgehammering incident that I think you talked about with your dad. Had you go down into a basement and knock a bunch of walls down, and I think that's the day I heard that's the day you kind of decided. It might not have been the exact moment, but it's something that, because you come from a long line of builders, right? Contractors, builders, that's what your family does. So when does the coaching bug get you?
Yeah, gosh, I could go on forever about that one. So yeah, here's the story. I worked construction for my dad. My great grandfather was a contractor. My grandfather was a contractor. Same thing with my dad. My brother dabbles in it a little bit. And summer jobs, you go home, you make some money working for your dad. It's a great opportunity to be outside and just work. And I enjoyed that. I just didn't enjoy it as much as competing, to be quite honest with you. And my dad told me, he told me from as long as I can remember, you better pick something you love doing in life, for a job, because you're going to be doing it for the majority of the time that you're alive. And he's so right about that. And you talk about the incident underneath the building. We were remodeling this house, and we just poured this foundation that was surrounding a new foundation that was trying to we had to get a crawl space into the old foundation. And it was a pretty small area, so you couldn't really get a jackhammer down there. So my dad handed me this friggin' hand sledge, and I had to go down there. I felt like I was escaping from Alcatraz. It was unbelievable. But I can still remember just the concrete all over me. It was in my shirt. I itched for about 4 weeks. It was something. But that kind of made me make the decision. Maybe not necessarily that I wanted to coach, but it made me the decision, told me that I really didn't like this home building stuff. I wanted to get out and do something different. But this knowing that I love to compete, the love of competition, especially back then, I think more so now, it's not just the love of competition, but having the opportunity to influence lives, I think is something that's big to me.
Now, so you get the opportunity right out of school to stay where you're comfortable, to learn the coaching trade. How does that conversation develop? Because we've had coaches on where they talk about, there are guys right now. We're doing this interview. We're almost in May. People are going to be walking across the stage. They're getting ready for that next step. How do you approach that? And was it good to be comfortable when you first got in?
Yeah, I think so. At the time, I didn't know if I wanted to coach high school football and track, or if I wanted to be at the high school level or the college level. I really didn't know. And so the year after I graduated and got my degree, I went back in and started working on my teaching credential. And it just didn't click for me. I just didn't enjoy, it seemed like there was a lot more babysitting going on, and people that were just, they had to be there rather than wanted to be there. And I just didn't like that, to be quite honest with you. And at the time, while I was doing the student teaching, I had the opportunity to coach football and coach track at Linfield. And I just enjoyed being around people that want to be where they're at. Those athletes, they wanted to be there. They wanted to be successful. They wanted to do everything they could to be a winner. I didn't get that feel, when I was student teaching. And so that was probably the biggest thing. Being able to be in programs that you knew everything about. I mean, I was a player, I was an athlete in the track program and a player in the football program. I knew what those philosophies were. Those came really easy. And so that definitely helped the transition from being an athlete to being a coach.
Now, how difficult, speaking of transitions, how difficult is the transition from being the guy in the locker room to being a guy with a clipboard? When you're talking about the guys that, you graduate, they're still junior, sophomore, freshman class behind you. How difficult is that transition when you're getting into the coaching profession to kind of break that? Listen, when we're on the field, we're going to work. This isn't we're not buddies right now.
Yeah, that's a really great question, because that's something that we coach. I love having ex-players on our staff. I love having young guys because they know the Bulldog way, and they know what our traditions are and what our expectations are. When I made that transition, I was lucky enough to have some great role models with coaches that were on our staff that were going through that same transition. I was also, with our coach Ed Langsdorf, Jay Losi, those guys were phenomenal role models too as coaches. But probably the most important, I'm going to say, is guys like Tremaine Payne, JP Green, Joey Rector. Those were three players. Those were three guys that were, if not, I think they were all a year younger than I was. Maybe one was 2 years younger. But those were the guys that made the transition the best. They were coachable guys. They could have had the attitude of, you've been out 1 year. What are you telling me what to do for? They weren't that way. They were very coachable. And they were awesome guys. And so I have those guys to thank more than anybody else for the experience that I had that first year. But it is a challenging year. I wasn't a guy that was going to go out and party and do crazy stuff or anything. I was kind of, just regular guy, I guess. And so I really wasn't in the social life of those guys, even as a player. So I didn't really have any idea what was going on. But I want to commend those three guys that they're the ones that made the transition really easy.
Now, Coach, at what point does the opportunity out east in Illinois kind of take shape, and why was that a place that you felt to move on in this coaching profession?
Well, it was a job. I mean, I'll just be honest with you. Sometimes you got to take jobs just to get jobs. I mean, it was my first full-time coaching opportunity. I Gosh, I did the student teaching thing for a year, and then I kind of subbed and just kind of hung. And then I got into grad school at Oregon State, got my master's degree in exercise science, and enjoyed that. And but then it was time to move on. It was time to move on, and at that time, I still didn't know if I wanted to be a track coach or a football coach.
Right.
And the beauty of the Illinois college job was it was an opportunity to be an offensive coordinator and a head track coach. And here's what's crazy about that job. Not only was I a head track coach, men's and women's track coach, offensive coordinator, recruit for both programs, I also taught exercise physiology. I also taught coaching theory classes. I also taught a health class. So, I mean, it was quite the job.
You were busy.
I'm thankful. Oh yeah, I was thankful that I was young. I don't know if I do that now, but it was a great experience. It was just time to move, and I've always been enamored about other areas around the country, different regions of the country, and be able to experience that. And that's one thing I'm real thankful that I had the opportunity to be in Central Illinois and be embedded in that culture for 2 years. And, I got a chance to coach some unbelievable players, maybe some of my all-time favorites. Derek Leonard, he's a head high school coach out in the state of Illinois. The guy's won, I've lost count. I think it's 8, it might be 9 state championships. His dad's the all-time winningest head football coach in the state of Illinois. And just being part of that family and getting to know that family, they've had a huge influence on me. And Patrick Bowman, another unbelievable player at Illinois College that was a running back. He was a 1,000-yard rusher, I think, for both years I was there. He set the single-season rushing record. I think it was my first year. And then the second year, Derek set the single-season passing record. And both those guys were coaches' kids. They freaking love football. They love to compete. They were in my office all the time talking about football. And most importantly, they're just great kids. Their character was outstanding. And they freaking love to compete. They were just so fun to be around. So that's kind of my, I was thankful to get a chance to go to Illinois for sure.
Well, and pretty young for an offensive coordinator and a head track coach, right? I mean, you're coaching a dual sport program, and then a pretty young guy to be an offensive coordinator at that point.
Yeah, I was 27 years old. I'd be lying to tell you if I knew everything there was to know about football. I think at that point, I think there goes a time in your career where, you get to a certain point and you think, man, I know everything there is to know about football. And at that point, I wasn't at that point there yet. I realized I didn't know much and I had to work and be a student of the game about so many aspects of it. But as you get older, you start thinking, man, I know a lot. And then you realize, man, I really don't know a lot. And then the older you get, the more you realize, boy, I really, really don't know a whole lot. But yeah, I was young. Thank God I had a ton of energy. Thank God I had a wife that understood what football coaching is all about. And same thing with, being a track coach too. At the time, doing both, it took a lot of time.
Now, since you brought up your wife, I have to ask, where did you meet your wife?
I met her at Linfield. She was a soccer player and also a track athlete. She was a middle distance runner. Her dad, and I didn't know this at the time when we first met, her dad was a head high school coach. He was very, very well. In fact, the high school field's named after him at Churchill High School, Floyd Halverson Field. And he won a bunch of games in Eugene, Oregon. And I had no idea that her dad was a head high school coach. And so I'm probably telling you too much right here, but anyway, we go on our first date, and our first date, we go to Rudy. We go watch the movie Rudy. You remember back in the 90s, back way long ago. And we go and watch Rudy, and we go to Dairy Queen afterwards. And so we're eating there, and she goes, I don't understand this. Why'd they have him? Why was he playing defensive end? Shouldn't he have been like a rover or something? Oh. And I'm thinking, how does she know rover? I mean, how would this, I mean, I knew she ran track at that point in time. I didn't know she played soccer. But yeah, that was impressive.
Wow. Now, Coach, you have the 2 years in Illinois college, and then you're going to move again, and you're going to go to a pretty important state in this country for football. You're going to go down to Texas, to TLU. Why was Texas Lutheran the place that it was the next stop? Because there was a lot of offensive success at Illinois College.
Yeah, I mean, all that offensive success again goes back to Derek and Patrick and the kids that were there. Those guys, they were just awesome. They were so coachable and they love football and it's just so much fun. But you get an opportunity to coach in Texas, you really have to take a serious look at that. And at the time, though, the two guys that were there were Linfield guys. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe we can get something going there. And it seemed like a really good fit with the two guys that were there. And it didn't work out real well. I think they were there for 4 or 5 years prior to me getting there, and I got there within 6 months. Texas Lutheran decided to make a change, and I had the opportunity to stay on with the coach that came in, and his name's Tom Miller, probably one of the most influential people that I've had in my life in so many different ways. And I had a chance to work with him for the next 5 seasons. And I went in there as a passing game coordinator. Coach Miller changed me to being an offensive line coach, which was awesome. Like I tell all of our offensive coaches here, I coached O-line for 2 years. I know enough to be dangerous, and coaching those guys was awesome. And middle of that second season with Coach Miller, he decided to make a change at offensive coordinator mid-year, and that's a story in itself and a challenge. But that was awesome. It was a great experience, with that transition. Coaching in Texas was great. It was a great university, great people. The coaches were phenomenal. Everything you hear about high school coaching and high school traditions in Texas is totally true. Guy by the name of Jack Narl, old school high school coach. He passed away just a year or two ago, and another influential guy in my life. He said this. He told me this. He goes, Coach, if you decide to leave the state of Texas, you're going to spend the entire career trying to come back. And luckily I'm in a good place right now, but I could see why.
Makes sense. I mean, everybody not that we've had a lot of Texas schools, although we're hoping later on this season, but everybody that we've talked to, I have a friend that helps out with this show. He played in Texas. It's a different, and Western Pennsylvania guy. It's easy for me to go, oh, well, the Whitfield's pretty good. No, we understand. We're maybe 4 or 5 on the list. There's Texas, there's California, there's Florida. You guys have football, baseball, soccer, you name it. It's kind of easy to be down there. But so first off, talk to us about that transition into midseason into the offensive coordinator position.
Gosh, I think things just weren't going great. I think we had some pretty good players. We just were. It was like a car that needed a tune-up in a lot of respects, and it just really wasn't going well. And I think that there just needed to be a change. I think there was a game in the season that was a winnable game, and we just didn't get it done on offense. And I got a phone call. I don't even, obviously it was probably early Sunday morning. Hey, can you come in early? I want to talk to you. And you don't ever know what those calls are going to be like. And so he said he wanted to make a change, and I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to kind of run the show for 5 games, and from that point on, it worked out great. And I think the following year, I think we were 2-8 that year. We kind of salvaged a couple games at the end of the year, and then the following year we were 7-3. And that was a big turnaround at the time, especially being in the American Southwest Conference. I mean, our non-conference game was Trinity. I think our 3 losses were Trinity, where they made it to the national championship game that year, and Hardin Simmons and Mary Hardin Baylor. So that was quite a conference.
Right. Those are some names. Now, so 5 years. It seems like you guys are. Again, I'm going to ask, what got you out of Texas? What got you out of Illinois? What got you out of Texas? Now, and I know we're going to go to Hamlin for a head coaching job, but I mean, was that the next move? Was that where you felt it was time that to make that next jump, or what was going on?
If Coach Miller would have stayed at Texas Lutheran, I'd still be at Texas Lutheran.
Okay.
He's an older guy he was an older guy, and he decided it was time for him to retire. And so he retired. I think he retired like I can't remember the specific days, but I'll just make them up. I think he retired on a Tuesday. I remember going out for barbecue with the staff on a Wednesday and trying to talk to the staff. What was so cool about that experience is I was the young guy on staff. We had John Lamb, we had Bill Shade, we had Larry Nowotny, we had all these older coaches They had so much dang experience. Jack Narl, we had Jack Narl, we had Gary Turberville, who was a very successful high school coach. We had all these old school, unbelievable mentors for me at that time in my life. It was just such a great. I never would have left, never. But he retired, so we eat barbecue. Well, you got to apply for some jobs. I mean, you just never know what's going to happen. And so I went home that night, applied for a bunch of jobs. I think on a Friday, I got a phone call from a search firm, and for that Minnesota the Hamlin job, and they said, "Well, we want to fly you up on Sunday." And I'm thinking, "Shoot, Sunday? That's like day after tomorrow." And
Yeah.
so we fly up there and go through their process, and had got offered the job. And it was take that job, know that I was going to have a job and a paycheck, or not. And it was kind of late, it was right before Christmas. I mean, it's Christmas break when I was on their campus interviewing. I mean, there was no kids around anywhere. So it was either have a job or not, and then sometimes in the world of coaching, that's, you got to have a paycheck.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Now, what was that? What was the interview process like becoming a head coach? Because I imagine it's not X's and O's. It's more, the recruitment, the retention, fundraising are the three things that jump into my head when you think about, because obviously I assume if you're not interviewing for a head coaching job, if they don't think the X's and O's. So what is the interview process like for that?
Yeah, I think I've talked to people about what they've gone through for interviews, and nothing really matches what I went through. It was different. But I think it was just different. It was different than I've experienced. So again, I get a phone call from a search firm, and it's kind of entertaining, to be honest with you. It was a really whirlwind deal. Get a call from a search firm. I think it was on a Friday. I flew out there on a Sunday. I think I flew in the morning, and then I interviewed that evening, and it was at an airport hotel. I wasn't even on the campus, and I think this is how it was. Is there was like 4 or 5, 6 of us that they interviewed in the hotel that day, and then the top 2 would make the final, and they would go to campus. And so, I'm sitting there. I think I interviewed at 7. I got done at 9. I think I was the last one of the day, and so they tell me, well, you're going to get a phone call in the morning, and it's going to say either you got to go to the airport and find your flight. And at the time I had to fly again. We were flying to my wife's folks' place in Eugene from Texas. So it was all messed up. So I had to, go from Minnesota to Arizona to Oregon. I mean, anyway, that's another story. But so I'm sitting there, I get done with the interview. It's 9 o'clock. What do I do? Do I pack? What do I get my suit out? I wake up in the morning. Should I be wearing warm-ups? What I'm going to wear on the airplane, or should I get juice dressed up in my suit? Because they said, yeah, you got 15 minutes to get down to the lobby, and we're going to take you to campus. So thinking, hell, I can barely get dressed in 15 minutes. So I get I put my warm-ups on because I'm a little superstitious, and thinking that, I won't get the call and I'll go on the plane. But if I do put my suit on, I definitely won't get the call and I'll go on the plane. So I get the call. So now I'm scramble mode. I got to get dressed up, put another different suit on. You're not going to wear the same suit, 2 days in a row. So I go and go to the campus, and again, it's Christmas break. So I think there's maybe 3 kids on the campus, the 3 that were there that I met with. And I met with the president. I don't know what their positions were. The provost, the guy that was in charge of their undergraduate programs, guy by the name of Bob Kloss. Bob Kloss is their stadium's the Kloss Center. He basically is the money. And then I met with a couple players. Got a little bit of a tour. I didn't get a campus tour. It was just a facilities tour. And to be honest with you, again, it was dark. I mean, I got there, and in Minnesota that time of year, it must get dark at 3 in the afternoon or something. I don't know, because I just remember it being dark. But I go through all these meetings and everything, and I just get done, and I get hauled back to the hotel. So it was an interesting deal, and get a phone call the next day. I think I was in Arizona, and the AD said, "Hey, be prepared. I think this is all going to work out for you. You need to have in mind, whether you want the job or not," because they wanted to move really fast.
Mhm.
And And again, so I had nothing else going. So yeah, heck yeah, I'll take the job. Facilities wise, I thought their facilities were outstanding just because of, I'll be honest with you, besides Mary Hardin Baylor back in the day, and even then back in the day, Mary Hardin Baylor's facility is not what it is today. They played at a high school stadium. I thought that the Hamlin facilities were really, really nice. I mean, they are, but you got to realize that every school in the Midwest has what they have are way better. I mean, and again, that's my first experience in Minnesota, the upper Midwest. Illinois, Central Illinois is different. Illinois Wesleyan, they've got a beautiful facility, but Illinois College now has a beautiful facility, but they didn't when I was there. So anyway, that's kind of the story. Kind of rambled on there, but
Now, how long are you in Ham?
I was 4 years.
So after those 4 years, why was it time to come out west or come back west, I guess?
Yeah, my third year, my first year, I can't even remember our records. I do remember, I think it was our third year, we were 4-6, which was the most successful year they've had there in like 20 years. That's a hard job. It is a real hard job. At the time, you're playing against St. Thomas, you're playing against Concordia, you're playing against St. John's, you're playing against at the time. Carleton was really good. St. Olaf was really, really good. Gustavus was really, really good. We were fighting an uphill battle, and to finish 4-6, man, I should have taken the money and ran. That final year, we had a terrible year. We were one and whatever, and the coach, the president decided to make a change. And my first year there, we beat St. Thomas, and I'll never forget this. I hired an offensive Daryl A. Paulsa, he's a Division I O-line coach somewhere. I can't keep track of where he's at now, but he was our O-line coach. He's a Linfield guy, and we beat St. Thomas. It was the first time they beat St. Thomas, and I have no idea. And it was like we won the Super Bowl. People were just flipping out, and we looked at each other like, this is just a game. And so I guess I didn't really realize the challenges what I was going to get into, but to be 4-6 and do what we did, we did some good things, but it apparently wasn't a good fit. And the greatest thing that ever happened to me happened. I got a chance to move out of Minnesota and move to California.
Now, why Redlands? What was the attraction? What drew you? And that's going to go into a further question. I think I sent it to you when we were talking earlier today. What is your why for Redlands? Because 2011, you get there. We're now in 2026. You're still there. So, longevity at one place is I think for a lot of people when you think about the NCAA and the coaching carousel that it is, longevity is a big thing because you don't often see it. I think we see it more at this level than we do at some of the other levels. But what has kept you? What brought you into Redlands, and what has kept you there?
Well, Rob, my wife and I, we've always wanted to move close back to the West Coast. We wanted to be within, it's a long day's drive, trust me, but it's a day's drive, back close to family. And of course, when we decided to move back here, my parents decided to move to Texas. So we're now like a day and a half drive from them, but a day's drive from my wife's parents. But so we're right in the middle. But we've always wanted to get back to the West Coast. We bounced around. We did what we wanted to do, experience the country, experience different cultures and regions of the country and different, different football cultures. And that was really big to me. I thought that would be a really fun experience. And it was. I wouldn't trade it for the world. But Mike Maynard, the head football coach here at the University of Redlands, has had a ton of success. He's a guy that was here for 30 plus years. And I was here with him for the last 10. And, I get the opportunity to move here. I'm not, I don't want to be recruiting repellent, but I'm not necessarily a Southern California guy. I'm not a big city guy. I like being kind of out in the woods a little bit, going fishing and riding my bike. And that's what's great about Redlands is we're right on the edge. We're an hour away from the desert. We're an hour away from Big Bear up in the mountains. I can drive 15 minutes and I'll be at 5,000 feet elevation. We're an hour away from the ocean. We're an hour away from downtown LA. So everything there is to do in the world, you can do from Redlands within an hour. And so just this location is really outstanding to be in. And my wife and I really enjoy that. But specifically, why Redlands? This is the first school that I've worked and coached at that I feel that values athletics just as strongly as they do academics. There is a serious balance here. Um, I really enjoy the players that we recruit here because they love to compete. They love to compete both on the field and in the classroom. And that's something that I've been looking for a long, long time. There's maybe one other place that's similar to that, but this is the place that I have found that I really enjoy that. But Mike Maynard gave me the opportunity to be the offensive coordinator here. We had a ton of success during the time that we were together. Coach Mariani, Joey Mariani, our defensive coordinator, is a big part of that. He's our associate head coach, and he's been here the same length of time, or maybe just a little bit longer than I have. But I feel like the location, the values of our institution, and lastly, I mentioned Coach Maynard and Coach Mariani, but a guy by the name of Jeff Martinez, a longtime athletic director here, has been awesome. He's retired now. We have a new person. Her name's Nikki Ayers, and I think she's filling the role in an outstanding way. Our president, Kristen Newkirk, she is big time football. And if you have a president, I'll tell you what, if you have a president that you run into at a flag football game, and the first thing she asks you is, "Hey, how's recruiting going?" And then she follows it with, "How's the offensive line recruiting going?" Now you know you got something special.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so thankful to be working for her and Nikki and everybody here, because the people here is what's really special.
Now, Coach, I want to touch specifically on that point. And you did kind of unpack it a little bit. What is the significance of having an administration that is behind you? Because there are some schools that they want to hold on to that. We're an academic institution that, yes, we have a football team, but Whereas some of the coaches I've talked to this season specifically, it seems that the institutions understand that it is a give and take with the football program. For most schools, especially most small schools in Division III, it's the largest recruiter that you have on at your disposal. What is it? What is the significance of having the administration fully behind you and fully dedicated to the program?
Yeah, I mean, it's just alignment. You talk about friction, and people think friction means that people are disagreeing and everything, but when things are all aligned, I mean, there is an efficiency of movement. And if there's friction, the efficiency of movement is not there, and therefore you're not going to get anything accomplished. And I'm not going to lie. I mean, we'll have hiccups here and there. You do everywhere. But the beauty about it here is everybody has one thing in mind, and that's the student experience. What is our student experience going to be? And when that is the number one goal, is to value the student experience, and that's what everybody's here for. I think things work pretty well. You have to have everybody in line.
Now let's talk about the transition from offensive coordinator to head coach. We talked off camera. It happened during that 6 years ago, where I kind of heard, recruiting wise, it's kind of funny when you talk to people. The quote I heard this week was, "You have to put the emphasis on anybody from 19, graduated high school in 19 or graduated college in 19. You're all right." And then you're in the post-COVID era. I think to bring up your 1990s is so far away. We had a joke growing up, but you're either before 9/11 or you're after 9/11. It's a completely different world. It just is. What was that transition like to becoming the head coach and having a little bit more time to kind of get yourself in before we picked everything back up?
Yeah, the transition from being an assistant to a head coach, it was not a typical transition with COVID, no doubt. And it was a tough time around here, just for so many reasons. But I just did it give us time? Yeah, I guess. But I first think about the challenges that we had my first year as being a head coach is everybody wearing masks during the spring? Are we getting people's temperature? I have to check all these guys in that are either vaccinated or not vaccinated. There was just so much of this that was just unbelievable. But here's where it was awesome. You couldn't have picked a better year to make a transition like this. You just had 100 and some guys sit around in rooms by themselves, not being able to do much, lift weights on their own. We had two senior classes that 21 season. They all wanted to play football with their teammates. And it was an awesome thing to be a part of because of that. Because guys, again, like I said a long time ago, guys wanted to be here. They wanted to be here so much. It was just such an exciting time because everybody got, it felt like, I don't know where you grew up, but when you grew up in the state of Washington, and you can even say this about Minnesota too, and you have weeks where it just rains and rains and rains and rains, and all of a sudden the sun comes out, and you come outside, and you feel that sun on your face. There's just not a better feeling. That's
Absolutely.
what the feeling was in that 21 season. And so that made the transition, you asked about that made the transition really, really well, really easier, I think, for our whole staff. Going through the things that we did, I think it really grew our full-time staff really close together. Coach Mariani and I are very close because of what we went through during that time. David Lord, who's still on our staff, same thing. I mean, there's a brotherhood within our staff. Rick LaCour, same thing. The guys who are on that staff through that transition know what I'm talking about.
Now, Coach, talk to me about what is a University of Redlands man? What are we looking for? Minus the fact he's got to be able to play football because you are the football coach. So I would assume that's a check mark that we can get out of the way. But what are we looking for? What is the when you're looking at the 4 for 40? What is that kid that you want to bring into this program?
Yeah, I want a guy that loves to compete. Whether it's on the football field, in the classroom, wherever, I don't care. I want guys that absolutely love to compete. I want guys that football's important to. It's got to be a priority. I don't want to say it's the priority. There's so many priorities in one's life, whether it's their family, their faith, academics, but it's got to be in that conversation of priorities. That's something that really is important to me. I want a guy that values his family. I feel if a guy values his family, he's going to be a strong character person. The definition of family is so different now than what it was back in the 90s. And really even before that. Family could be a mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, grandfather, uncle, friend of the family, anybody. But I want people, because if you value family, you value relationships. And if you value family and relationships, I think you're going to be a good character person.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the 2025 season before we jump into all the crazy things that are happening in the Division III world and in the NCAA here in 26. 6-4 overall, 4-4 in the conference. Now that the dust is settled, what was your takeaway when the season ended for the 2025 team?
Yeah, I thought we started the season well. I was real excited about knocking off the first opponent that we had. I thought that it was a close game. I thought it was the opponent played really, really well. I think our second game we went up and played in a tough place to play. I mean, to travel to Spokane is not an easy place, and to come away there with a victory with a very, very well coached team and the team of a bunch of really good athletes that play hard. I mean, they love football up there. You can tell, and they had a great year. They won their conference and everything. But for us to knock them off, that was exciting for us. And we did not play well our next two games. We decided to make a change in a position that impacts the game quite a bit. Found a guy that could really compete at a high level. We're excited about him, and he's coming back this next year. And had some injuries in a critical position at our receiver position towards the end of the year. We had some real depth issues, and that hurt us our last two games. And that's on me. I got to do a better job of recruiting better depth. And so we're excited about this coming year. But for last year, it was Coach Acciani's first year as our offensive coordinator, which is a big deal. And I think that's really helped our program. And I'm definitely looking forward to the future.
Now, Coach, you touched on the depth part of it. How many guys are we losing? How many guys are we bringing in this year? What's the roster going to look like in 2026?
Yeah, that's one of those questions you got to tell me, because I have no clue about specific answers. But we lost a lot of guys and we're bringing a lot of guys in. How about that?
That works.
We got a lot to replace on defense. We had a really, really good front last year. Our defensive line was outstanding, and we got a lot of guys that we got to replace up front, and got some receivers we got to replace. We're looking forward to some guys that we have coming in a number of different positions, but we got to replace the D-line. That's a big one.
Now, Coach, in 2026, you're gonna flip flop, right, with the two opponents from this past season. One will be at home, one will be away. We'll just flip them. Is that how that?
No, that's a major change. Thank God we're out of the pod deal, but we still got a poddish type thing at the end. So So we have our two non-conference games, and then we play our conference season.
Right.
And then the last game of the year, whoever is the first place team will host the second place team. Whoever the third place team is, I believe, will host the fourth place team, all the way down through the bottom of the conference. So it is what it is. We'll compete hard.
Now, are you excited about the two new members returning to, I guess, one returning and one coming from Division II, I believe, and then being brought back, right? Specifically.
Yeah. Yeah, Whittier is coming back to the conference. They've been in the conference for a long time. They took a 3, 4, 5 year break from the conference. It's really great for the conference for them to come back. And then the addition of Azusa Pacific will be interesting. Azusa Pacific was a Division II school. They dropped football probably about the same time as Whittier did, so they're starting their football program back up. But the thing that's different for them is they have a Division II infrastructure. I mean, they got a bunch of trainers and a bunch of SIDs, and they're used to recruiting and doing everything at that level. But now they got to play by Division III rules, and they don't have scholarships. And so I'll be interested to see how they do.
Now, Coach, talk to me a little bit about and I want to make sure I get this right, the Smudge Pot game. Explain this to me. So that's you and Cal Lutheran, right?
Correct.
And how long has this game been going on?
I want to say my third year we started the Smudge Pot game.
Okay.
It might have been my fourth year. I might have been my second year. I think it was my second year. So my first year I came here, they beat us the first 2 years that I was here. And so I remember getting it from them, and it was painted purple and yellow or
right.
Gold or whatever their colors are. And so I think it was my second year. So do you know what a smudge pot is?
No.
So smudge pot is this big aluminum. This is, again, someone not from Southern California, not from the citrus industry, trying to explain it. A smudge pot looks like a smokestack built on top of a 5-gallon bucket. Basically, they put kerosene in this bottom of it, lit it, and it kept the orange groves warm at night. At least that's what they told me. And so basically we hand this smudge pot back and forth, and that's our trophy. And we've been lucky enough to where, we lost it that first time. And I hate to say it. I mean, we had a 10 or 11 game streak where we won it. And then we actually lost it this year, and we played Cal Lu twice this year. And so we beat them the second time, but that apparently was not the smudge pot game, which in my opinion, anytime we play Cal Lu should be a smudge pot game. But no, Coach Lugo's a great guy. They do a phenomenal job over there, and it's been a fun rivalry for sure.
Now, the last question I have before we get into the tech side of things, and then we'll get into 2026 a little bit later. How hard is it being an island school with the West Coast and the travel that it takes to get? How hard is the non-conference games? How hard is it to find non-conference games? I know there's an agreement, right, between you guys and the Northwest Conference. But if you didn't have that agreement, how hard would it be to find those games?
I think it's gonna depend on who you ask. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I don't think it's hard at all.
Okay.
And I think it depends on who you want to play. Our non-conference schedule, we had one year, our non-conference schedule was we went and played Mary Hardin Baylor, and then we had to play Linfield. So, when I first got here, my very first game here was against North Central. And then I think Whitworth was our second game. And I'll be honest with you, that was an unbelievable game. We beat North Central that game, and it was really a fun game. That they were unbelievable team. They were really good. So we got a little lucky there maybe, but it was awesome. So, teams are always looking for games. Mm-hmm. And so it's just finding games. It's not that hard.
And I imagine that those first 2 weeks, especially, it's a little easier because everybody kind of follows that mold of that's kind of the non-conference area, 1 through 3, I think. And then once you get out of there, that's when you get into your conference play.
Correct.
Coach, what do you think of did you guys utilize the iPads last year, and do you think it helps the game?
I think sometimes I wish this thing wasn't recording because I don't, if you know me, I'm blunt honest, and sometimes it gets me in trouble. Um, I think the iPads are pretty nifty. I think they're pretty cool. I think it helps the inferior coaches that don't have a whole lot of experience. If you're a veteran coach, you can see things quickly and make adjustments quickly. If you're a newer coach, having that iPad, I think it gives you a little bit more advantage to see things a little bit better, because you get to watch it 4 or 5, 10 times. If you're a veteran coach and you know what you're doing, you can get it done pretty quick without having the iPad. That's just my opinion.
Now, do you think that leads us to, and I know the Northwest Conference does it. I want to ask, do you guys have the instant replay abilities, or are you allowed to challenge in the
We
SCIAC?
we don't. And when we played Whitworth this past season, we challenged the call, and you got to understand, it's not like Division One where they got 15 different camera angles and everything else. You have to hope and pray that wherever that play was is going to be able to be seen either by the end zone camera or the sideline camera. And the play that we questioned it was a terrible spot, and it was like on the 40-yard line, so you had a great angle to see whether it was a legit spot or not.
Right.
And we challenged it, and that's where the iPads did come in handy, because Joey Mariani, our D coordinator, was going crazy about it was a terrible spot, and he saw it on the iPad and it was a terrible spot. So we challenged it, and they overturned it, and so instead of getting a first down, they had a punt, and we took the ball, drove down, kicked field goal right before half, and I think it really changed the momentum of the game. So I think the replay would be a good thing. I think it would help us with the targeting deal. I just, for whatever reason, we haven't got that far in a conference yet.
So it's interesting. Most of the time I phrase that question about the iPads as, is this leading us to having an official on the sideline that's his job? He holds a little tablet. You put him with an SID or whatever, with a little umbrella. And in the event of targeting, where we know you're going to lose 4 quarters of play when you're only guaranteed 40 games in a collegiate career, I think that's where the iPads really could become quite a bit more useful, in the sense that we don't take time away from a student athlete. We don't have to wait until halftime for them to come and look at it. We can take a timeout. Let's go look at it, make sure that kid, it actually is targeting. And maybe that makes the refs use the targeting as not have to throw it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Unless it's an egregious play, I don't want to have to waste the time to go review this. I'm not going to call it. And maybe and I get it. Targeting is for the safety. I just think at this point we need to come up with a clear definition of what targeting is, and it can't change from crew to crew. And that's not on the referees. I think that's everybody's interpretation of targeting specifically is different. The other side of technology that's coming down, the in-helmet communication. Are you excited about the in-helmet communication coming down? Are you guys going to use it this year? And how do you think that will work out?
Yeah, I have no idea. We have 2 coaches on our staff that have come from programs that have used it. One made the decision, or let me rephrase that. They had the opportunity to use it. One staff decided not to use it. The other staff, they said there was more problems than anything else. It was constantly breaking down and not working real well. So we're going to use it. We're going to try it, and we'll see. And we'll go from there. If you don't, and the team you're playing does, and you lose, well, there's a reason why, and that's not necessarily the case, but it could be.
Right. Now, how's spring ball going? I know we're kind of right at the end of spring ball, right?
Well, in California, spring ball took place about a month ago. No, I'm just giving you a hard time. Our graduation's actually on Friday.
Wow.
That's how quick we work. So our graduation's Friday. I think our spring practice was over 3 weeks ago. It went great. We changed some things up, did some things a little bit differently. But I was really happy on how things went.
Threw me a curveball there it was a month ago, and then now it wasn't a month, but it was 3 weeks. So, Coach, what's the message for the alumni base and everybody for 2026 coming in?
Yeah, we're excited. We got a great quarterback coming back that we're real excited about. The newcomer of the year is coming back, running back, Mark Mitchell. He's a really good player, great kid. He's coming back. We're real excited about some position groups that feel that we've probably recruited better in some position groups than we ever have before. And that's saying a lot. I mean, when you've been somewhere for 15, 16 years,
Mhm.
that's saying quite a bit. So we're real excited about this coming year. I think the attitude of our team during the off season is it has built upon what it was last year. I feel like last year there was I feel like a new standard was set, which needed to be set, and I'm excited about that to continue this coming season.
Let me circle back real quick on the on recruiting. What is the recruitment area for you guys? Obviously California, but then
Yep.
where are we going? Where how far west or east are we going? I can't imagine you're going that much further west, but how far east? How far down into Texas? Like, are we going down into Texas? Are we nationally recruiting?
No, we recruit the West Coast, California mainly. We want to do a great job. I mean, you can throw a rock and hit unbelievable players, within a mile of our campus. We're right in the middle of the IE. I don't know if there's a better football area in the country, and I've recruited Houston, so there's some really good football in this area. But we're mainly West Coast, California, Washington, and Oregon. If there's someone from outside the area that has an interest in Redlands, we'll follow up with it, and recruit that person if he's interested. But we're not going to work real hard on states outside of those three.
And then how often are we looking at the transfer portal? I know that that's kind of I've had both sides of it. Coaches that have said, "No, I don't even know what my passcode is. I don't look at it." I've had other coaches that say you're crazy if you're saying you're not looking at it because it's there. Where do you guys fall? Are you using it? And
We go hot and cold. There's some times where we feel like, oh yeah, this is great, and then there's sometimes it's a waste of time. We're probably somewhere in the middle.
then the big hot topic that came up in D3 from a different show than mine. They brought up the NIL money that's worked its way down into the Division 3 ranks. There are descending stories, I guess you would say. Some are saying that there are people that are building war chests, and we're already seeing that from some schools. There's some schools saying that's not true. We've not heard that. Where do you guys fall? Are we building an NIL? Is that coming? Is it here in Division 3 now? And have you heard this from other coaches that are starting to build a pot of NIL money?
I've heard rumors and that kind of thing. There's been some online articles that I've read about some programs. I do know that there's going to be some schools that are going to be very, very advantaged over other schools. I think the schools that are in smaller towns that, it's a one school town, so to speak. I know that's a high school reference, but I think you understand where I'm coming from with some of these smaller towns that have programs that are strong, that it's going to give them an advantage. Here at the University of Redlands, we're in Southern California. Division 3 is, it's cool stuff. It's good football, and our guys compete. But, we're competing against USC, UCLA, the Rams, Disneyland, Knott's, Magic Mountain,
Right.
everything, the beach.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
So we're not that small town thing. And so, when you talk about NIL, that's not anything that, if guys want to pursue it themselves and work at it, I will do everything I can to help them with it. But to say that, we have a collective and it's ran by, alumni Joe Blow there, and that's not what we're about. It doesn't fit. It selfishly doesn't fit my philosophy as far as trying to help people become better people.
Makes sense. Um, Coach, what would be a piece of advice that you would give to a young coach? Either the guy I talked about earlier in the episode that graduates, maybe Friday graduates and walks across the stage and wants to get in, or that coach that's a coordinator or a position coach currently that's looking to maybe make a change for themselves. What would be the piece of advice for them?
Gosh, always be learning. You can never not learn enough. Be yourself. You can't go out and watch videos of some other coach and pretend that you're him. Just be
Right.
yourself. Better learn how to recruit. If you're going to coach college football, I mean, you better learn how to recruit. You better understand people. Um, Those are just some random thoughts that I think. I had one of the coaches that I worked for a long time ago said, if you're going to get into coaching, there's three ways to do it. One, you got to make a name for yourself in your sport. You got to be an Olympian. You got to be in the NFL. You better know somebody. You better be related to somebody and know somebody that's going to help you achieve your goals, or you better get a great education. And my only route was that great education. I was lucky enough to get a great education where I went to school and got my master's degree, and that really is what got my foot in the door in Illinois. And I have that person to thank, and talk to me about get a great education.
Now, is the master's degree? I know in as we've referenced a couple of times, the '90s, that was a big prerequisite, right? That was like a thing
Absolutely.
everybody was looking at. Is it still that way for
No,
the coaching profession?
no, I don't think so. I mean, we just hired two new guys on staff this year, two full-time coaches, and um, no, not for us, at least. I mean, it's a bonus. It's nice, but because at this level, teaching isn't as important as what it was as it once was. I mean, it used to be, like I said, I was head track coach. I was the offensive coordinator. I taught exercise physiology. You can't go and teach exercise phys without a master's degree. I could barely teach it with a master's degree. So yeah, it's not as important now.
Okay. And then, what's the significance of Division III football and Division III athletics?
The balance, the balance of academics, the athletic sport that one chooses, and work or social life, just the balance. And I think the benefit of that isn't just what's going on while they're here, but I think the benefit carries with them into the workforce. If I'm an employer, I want to look for a person that was a college athlete, especially at the Division III level, because you know that they're going to be held accountable not only on the athletic fields but also in the classroom. I think there's some levels that, yeah, you're an athlete. That doesn't necessarily mean you were a student. I mean, you may have graduated or you may have a degree, but what kind of student were you truly? And I think the majority of these D3 schools, you are a student.
Yeah.
And I don't. I may get myself in trouble for saying this, but you always hear about student first. I'm a believer that you're going to learn some skills on fields and in courts and in pools and on tracks that it's going to benefit you as much or more than maybe what you learn in the classroom later in life, for later in life. But Division III, it's the balance. It's what you can bring to a job later in life. The ability to work together for a common goal with a whole bunch of people that are different than you, the love for competition, being able to be organized enough to survive academically, and succeed academically. That's balance. If I'm an employer, that's what I want to find.
Right, right. Especially because you have, and it's the time management part of it too. If you know
Yep.
that they're a student athlete, you know that they meticulously had everything had to be to get all the stuff done because you just don't. You only got 24 of them in a day.
Yep.
All right, Coach. We're at the Fast Five. It's not about football. These are just about you. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Probably about 10 different places, to be quite honest with you. I'll answer that. I'll pick a motorhome and a boat,
All right.
because that way I can move around and travel. I don't know. That's a tough question. I really enjoyed living in Texas. I enjoy the South, the time that I've spent in the South. I enjoy Montana, Idaho, the Colorado, Leadville, Colorado. Unbelievable place. If you like to mountain bike, there's not a better place than Leadville, Colorado. The trails and the lake that they got there, beautiful spot. The state of Washington, love that place. Hansville and Enola, Washington, where I grew up. Yeah, those are two places that I almost would want to say there.
Okay. What's the most important lesson that you've learned thus far over your career?
Gosh, there's a lot of them. I don't know. There's just so many different types of people out there in the world, and you got to celebrate every single one of them.
Everybody has a story to tell, and that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
So, if you weren't coaching, what would you be doing?
Excuse me?
If you weren't coaching, what would you be doing?
I'd probably been in that basement, pounding out that foundation.
Say,
I ask myself that question sometimes, and my mom was a realtor. She sold real estate, and my dad was a builder. And I think back, now, with the internet and social media, and now that you can be educated about so many things, I might have been not real smart to go into coaching. Heck, I could have been retired by now if I'd have done the whole home builder real estate thing. If I would have worked as hard doing that as I do football, it would have been different. But I don't know. I don't know. Either that, I love fishing. Hell, maybe I'd have been a commercial fisherman. I don't know.
Best compliment you've ever received?
I just would say a generic thank you.
Thank you goes a long way.
Yeah,
Thank you goes a long way. But the other side of compliments, best insult you've ever got.
that's a tough one. I can't think of anything real specific. I don't know. Maybe questioning. When one questions you, there's a difference between asking questions and questioning.
Right.
And if someone's questioning you, it means that you probably didn't clearly communicate what you meant to. I don't know if that's maybe kind of philosophical, but that's my thought.
Well, the last question I ask everybody, was there a question that you were expecting me to ask you? And if so, how would you have answered it?
Yeah, I go through a lot of, these hypothetical questions to try to prepare myself for things like this. You mentioned something about asking about, all the places I've worked, the Linfields, the Illinois colleges, the Texas Lutherans, the Hamlins, and all that. I would have thought that you would ask, what's the difference between all of them? And there is a significant difference between all of them. And I'll just leave it at that.
I like that. I like that answer. Coach, I want to.
But that's the beauty of Division III and small college football and small colleges in general. Every school's got its own personality and a way of doing things. You got to find the one that fits you the best.
I hear you there. I hear you there, Coach. I really appreciate you taking the time. Best of luck this year. I hope that we can stay in touch, and we'll catch you next week, Chuckleheads.
I would love that. I tell you what you're doing I had no idea you were doing this for Division III athletics, and I feel really bad, but for what you're doing, I can't thank you enough. There needs to be more people like you that support this level of athletics. It is so dang important to so many people, and I think people need to know that. So appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you very much, Coach. We'll see you next week, Chuckleheads.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Dingo Talk. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. For more info and to contact the show, you can find us on Twitter @DingoTalk.